but their oldest child was 7 years old, and I was 7 years old. I met her. She was beautiful. And I said, I like you. Welcome to my home. It is so good to have you here. I've been dreaming about this for a long time. I've wanted to tell my stories to my kids, to my grandchildren. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to hear them, but if you're out there and you're listening to them and you're enjoying them, I hope you will see the craziness of God. I call them crazy God stories. My life has been filled with, I thought it was a normal life, but the more I realized it's been pretty wild and different. And so I want to tell you some of the stories that have happened and hopefully bless you, but I also want to bless the Lord because He has not given us a boring, normal, dull life. He lets us live a life that's exciting and bizarre. So I want to start this first introduction with, well, I should tell you my name. My name is Finn Torgeson. My wife's name is Sandy, and I am here to tell you one of the first stories that I want to share, and it's about Sandy. I grew up in Taiwan. At the time I grew up there, it was called Formosa. It's a small island in the Pacific on the border with China, and I was 2 months old when I got there. My dad was a linguist. He studied languages. He was born in China, and his father challenged him to work with the Mongol people. And when he was an adult, he went back to China and worked in Inner Mongolia, which is part of China, not Mongolia, but it's the part of China that has a lot of Mongolian people. Studied the Mongolian language and learned to translate it. And so after World War II, he was involved with the translation of the Mongolian Bible for 2 or 3 years, helped revise it and finished it, published it in it was actually 51 before it was finished. And then he moved to Taiwan and he was looking for a place to do more translation work. And so he ended up on the east coast of Taiwan where there were 10 tribes. And no one was working with the tribes then, the tribal people of Taiwan. There were some Presbyterian churches and some Presbyterian ministries going on there, but no one was working with the language issues. So he chose the largest tribe called the Amish people, and he started learning their language and translating their language, and that's where I went. It was a fishing village. The town was called Shingang. There was one road. There were no traffic lights. There was nothing. It was a village. And we grew up there. I had 4 older brothers and sisters and a younger sister. And so we thought this was just normal life. But then, as I'm growing up, I didn't know about this at the time, but I found out later. My dad, with all the Amish people he got to know doing his translation work, there were some that had diseases. We would know them today as cancer or whatever their disease was. And he would take them to local hospitals in Taiwan, and the hospitals wouldn't let the tribal people in. There was history from World War II and earlier where the tribal people had partnered with the Japanese and were considered rebels or considered traitors to the Chinese people. And so the Chinese had a hard time with the tribal people because they had actually worked with the Japanese who had occupied Taiwan for 49 years. So Dad takes these guys, these people that have health issues to the Chinese hospitals. They're refused. My dad says, I'll pay all the fees. I will cover all the expenses. And they still couldn't get in. And so my dad's thinking, I'm losing guys. They're dying with diseases that can be cured. What can we do? So he contacted the mission. He sent the mission we were with. My dad was a missionary with team in Taiwan. And he sent them a letter and said, could you find a doctor and a nurse to come out and work with me? I'll do the translation work and have this doctor and nurse be the medical missionaries that set up clinics and whatever is needed by the Amish people, the tribal people of the mountains of Taiwan. Well, Team found a doctor that was preparing to go to Rhodesia in Africa. And so the doctor's name was Frank Dennis. But the hospital in Rhodesia that Team had already had 3 doctors lined up to go there. And they said, we actually don't need you here in Rhodesia. We need you in Taiwan, where Edvard Torjussen, my father, has written a letter saying, can you come and help us set up some medical work? And so Frank Dennis started thinking about it. He goes, where's Taiwan? I have no idea where Taiwan is. Or at that time it was called Formosa. Where is Formosa? And so he found out and figured out, and he ended up coming to Taiwan. And in 61, he arrived in Taiwan, and he brought his family. There were, I think, only 4 of them at the time. Their 5th child was born when they were in Taiwan, but their oldest child was 7 years old, and I was 7 years old in 61. Now you know the year I was born. I met her. She was beautiful. And I said, I like you. And she looked at me, and she giggled, and she turned around and ran away. And I've been chasing her ever since. Her name is Sandy. I am now married to her. But the story I want to tell you today is one of God's crazy stories. How I found my wife. I met her at 7 years of age. I fell in love with her then. Her family was crazy. They were the kind of people that go camping in the mountains in strange, wild areas. Her father's a surgeon. He was ready for anything. And I followed Sandy. So at 7 years of age, we met for the first time. I really liked her. And then in 4th grade, we were in the same school together because we were in the same mission. We went to the same boarding school for only 1 or 2 years, 4th and 5th grade, before my family went back to the States. But in 4th or 5th grade, you know, guys just are a little afraid of girls. So it wasn't a great time for building relationships. And so there wasn't much that happened then. But I did see her, and she was in the boarding school, and we were living in the town. It was Taichung, Taiwan. And then when we were 13, I had finished 3 years in the States. Our family had gone back to the States for 3 years. My mom had health issues, and we had spent those 3 years getting her health issues dealt with. Then we went back to Taiwan. So for you young folks, just be shocked at this. This was 1968. I go back to Taiwan, and I'm in 9th grade. Could I be 13 years old in 9th grade? I guess I could. So I'm 13 years old, and I see Sandy again. We fell in love. I started walking, in a missionary boarding school. The way you fall in love is you basically look at each other and smile. And we started holding hands, actually in class. We would hold hands. We'd sit in the back row, read Mad magazine. Oh no, did I say Mad Mag? Do you guys remember Mad magazines? We would read Mad magazines and hold hands and look at each other and smile. And we had a wonderful relationship for about 6-7 months, the fall of 1968. And then things didn't work out so well. I don't know if you can tell from right now, I used to not talk at all. I didn't know how to talk. I was a very quiet, shy person. And I think Sandy was hoping for someone that would talk and engage with her and speak about things. But all we would do is hold hands and look at each other. Well, there might have been a few other things, like a kiss or two here or there. But I didn't talk. And after a while, Sandy realized there's nothing here. The guy won't talk to me and won't engage and won't relate. And so we were still in the same class, in the same school, but we weren't together as much anymore. And so my life went on. I was in sports, involved in things. And then in 70, our family came back to the States. I got involved in high school in America for my last 2 years of high school, for my junior and senior year. And then graduated from high school, went off to Moody Bible Institute for college. and played soccer there, studied communications, got involved in a lot of ministry projects, was preparing for a missionary life because I felt like God was calling me to some kind of work overseas, and was searching that out. And then in 1974, I get a phone call. Our family gets a phone call. It's from Sandy. See, she's in Chicago for a Thanksgiving dinner in November of 74. And the housing situation is really bad. And she says, can I come over and stay with you guys? She knew my parents because we were in the same mission together. And my dad answered the call and said, well, of course, yeah, come and stay with us. And so that Friday afternoon, she had done the Thanksgiving dinner with the group that she was with. Friday afternoon, she comes over to our house. And my dad sits us down in the living room. And my dad has been a counselor and a kind of a recruiter for team to help find new recruits and missionaries and help university and college students figure out what they're doing with their life. And so he says to her, so you're studying nursing. How are you going to use that for the Lord? And what are your plans for your life? And Sandy sat down there and answered really clearly that for years she had never wanted to be a missionary. She never wanted to go overseas again. She didn't like the mission world and community, but that in the last few months that God had been showing her that she needed to be willing to go wherever God wanted her to go. And if that meant going back overseas, she would be willing to do it. And I'm sitting next to her going, wow, that is a huge, my dad just scares these college students. And she handled him so well and responded so well. So basically it took about 5 minutes to listen to her. I knew I was in love again. And so after I got rid of my dad, or he walked out and, we were done, later that evening, Sandy and I started talking. And okay, she was there Friday night, all day Saturday. Sunday afternoon, she had to go back to Minnesota, where she was from. And on the way back, she told the guy driving the car, I met the guy I'm going to marry. Well, while she was driving back, I wrote her a letter saying, how do we stay in touch? Because you live in Minnesota, I'm in Chicago, Illinois. I need to stay in touch. And my letter to her, and then she sent a letter to me too, crossed in the mail. And we both knew. It didn't take long. We knew we were meant for each other. We had been checking out other people. We had been dating others, but neither of us had been able to find anybody that we could really connect with and relate to. So my first crazy God story is to say that you do not know where God is going to find the spouse, the right person for you. It might be the kid you knew when you were 7 years old, like I did. It might be someone else. Trust God. He's real and he's crazy. And I have now been married to Sandy for 42 and almost 43 years. And let me tell you, I am so thankful. And God bless you. Thank you.